Citing Bachl is saying, according to new scientific evidence, appropriate dynamic resistance exercise should be recommended as a safe and effective supplementary therapy mode in order to counteract peripheral maladaptation, to improve muscle strength, which is necessary for recreational and daily living activities, and thus quality of life of patients with stable chronic heart failure. However, cardiovascular complications related to blood pressure elevation are the primary concern with resistance training in cardiac patients. The rise in blood pressure, however, depends on the variety of controllable factors, including the magnitude of the isometric component, the load intensity, the muscle mass involved, the number of repetitions, the load duration, and also the Valsalva maneuver. There were some interesting measurements, intra-arterial blood pressure measurements done in cardiac patients that have demonstrated that there are only modest elevations, about 40 to 60% MVC with 15 to 20 reps. And doing such a resistance training, you have a blood pressure rise comparable with endurance training. However, resistance training is not recommended for all patient groups. The appropriate training method is highly dependent on each patient's clinical status, cardiac stress tolerance, and possible comorbidities. And there is a recommendation done by this group saying that the criteria for resistance training might be moderate to good ventricular function, good cardiac performance capacity, more than 5 to 6 meds, no symptoms of angioinfectories or C-segment depression under continued maintenance of medical therapy. Well, let's go to the next risk factor, the next chronic disease, obesity. And I first start also with some numbers. WHO saying that at the moment we have about 1.6 billion adults overweight, and it will rise to 2.3 billion in a few years. 400 million are obese, and in 17 years this will double. So these are effects. And you know that it's not only in adults but also in kids. And if you're looking at the incidence and prevalence of obesity in kids, it's horrible numbers all over the European countries as well as US and also starting in developing countries. And you know, this is the start point of the generation XXL. So what's about exercise therapy? For these patients, the following intervention program can be proposed. Combined caloric restriction and endurance training are 3 to 5 sessions per week. A dietary restriction combined with endurance training intensity should be moderate, 55 to 65% of VO2 max, but the duration should be long, if possible, more than 1 hour. I'm sure you cannot do this from the very beginning of the training, but this is the way of how to coach a patient. We start with less time, less intensity, and then increase duration of exercise and also intensity. And walking and cycling exercise are preferred in connection with strength training exercises. In a meta-analysis done 97 states that the average weight loss as a result of the 16 weeks combined endurance, exercise training and caloric restriction averaged about 11 kilos, which is not bad for 16 weeks intervention. So it can be stated that in those patients, dietary restriction combined with endurance exercise training is the most effective strategy to maximize body weight loss. Let's jump to diabetes. Showing you an old study. Those patients in this slide represent 25,000 physicians. And you see the decreasing risk of the incidence in diabetes with increasing frequency of vigorous exercise up to 5 times a week. So showing the effect of exercise as a preventive measure. But if you are suffering with diabetes, exercise is one of the most important columns of the therapy, together with medication, together with dietary restrictions. And what is recommended as exercise therapy in patients with diabetes? Aerobic walking, jogging, cycling, stair climbing, so aerobic exercise, but performed in ways that do not traumatize the feet. And also strength training at moderate level, circuit programs, 10 to 15 reps, as you have seen in the past recommendations. The frequency should be 3 to 5 times a week and daily, taking insulin therapy. The duration between 20 to 60 minutes with a warm-up and cool-down. This can be also recommended to every other exercise done in every other disease for risk factors. The intensity should be about 60 to 90% of the maximum heart rate, or 50 to 85% of the VO2 max. And insulin therapy and blood glucose levels at the time of exercise must be considered. Exercise at time of peak insulin action has to be avoided, but you know this for sure, how to integrate the insulin therapy, diet, and physical exercise. Giving you some other results from other studies showing the Finnish diabetes prevention studies showed that cumulative incidence of diabetes was 20% lower with exercise, saying it's 20 to 30 minutes of daily physical activity when compared with inactive control subjects. And the US diabetes prevention program found that cumulative incidence of diabetes was 58% lower in individuals treated with intensive diet and exercise compared to placebo. And showing a very, let's say, impressive slide showing the incidence or the increase of all-cause mortality compared to the aerobic fitness. And I think I don't have to comment this slide because shows very clearly the interaction between high aerobic fitness and low all-cause mortality. Just in diabetes, the recent 5, 8, 10 years came in the question, should we do only aerobic exercise? Can we do resistance exercise? Should we combine aerobic and resistance exercise? Or could it be done only as a physical therapy, only resistance exercise? And I picked out such a comparison about the effects of aerobic exercise and resistance exercise. And if you go through these, let's say, variables, you will see that besides muscle mass, which is more increased due to resistance training, there are not really big differences in the effects of those different training regimens. The question is this true? Is this documented really in a high extent? And I want to cite Dr. Reeves, recently published in 2006, and he's saying that aerobic exercise has consistently been shown to improve glucose control, enhance insulin sensitivity, improve cardiovascular risk factors such as visceral adiposity, lipid profile, dural stiffness, and arterial function. Consistent with this evidence, the American Diabetes Association recommends that individuals with type 2 diabetes perform at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise and or at least 90 minutes of vigorous aerobic exercise per week. So this is the well-known fact. And then it's saying that resistance training has recently been recognized as a useful therapeutic tool for the treatment of a number of chronic diseases. It has been demonstrated to be safe and efficacious for the elderly and obese individuals. Similar to aerobic exercise, resistance training has been reported to enhance also insulin sensitivity, daily energy expenditure, and quality of life. Furthermore, resistance training has the potential, and this is very important, to increasing muscle strength, lean muscle mass, and bone mineral density, which could enhance functional status and leukemic withdrawal and assist in the prevention of sarcopenia and osteoporosis. So, what is the summary out of these statements from Dr. Reeves? He's saying that the current evidence is that small resistance training efficacy studies may not have feasibility to generalize at the population level for those living with type 2 diabetes. There is now a definite need for larger population-based efficacy and effectiveness studies that address the feasibility of resistance training on a broader level. But anyway, also some of those studies with big numbers of people are missing. I think that both aerobic and resistance exercise, and it's not only my opinion, but the opinion of many international bodies, can and should be applied to patients with diabetes type 2, depending on comorbidity of those patients. Let's come very briefly at the end of my talk to osteoporosis, showing the projected costs of osteoporosis in Europe, and I don't think I have to comment this picture to see how dramatically increasing the costs for treatment of osteoporosis. Let's have a short view to the percentage change in body mass, body mineral density compared to controls, and I'm giving you here the different impacts of different sports activities to different sides of the bones, spine, hip, arm, and legs. And you can see, for example, that cycling has very less effect on the body mineral density compared to gymnastics or compared to ball games, volleyball. That also running only affects the hips, or more or less affects the hips. So you have to take into consideration this when applying strength training, or let's say strength training to patients with osteoporosis. But the problem is that I give you only one slide with those studies, a little bit older studies. The problem is that whatever you are doing, strength training, jogging, combined with weightlifting, the results are not very promising. You see only very small increase in body mass density, bone mineral density, and also if you apply vibration exercise, it's not dramatically what you can gain with this exercise. And therefore, I think everybody is saying that exercise therapy in persons with osteoporosis can eventually slow down bone loss, but not replace drugs, and not replace, and this, my opinion, is the most important, not the prevention. And I'm sure you know this slide, that if you try to increase peak bone mass and mineral density in young age, then you will come later down to this border of osteoporosis, this threshold of osteoporosis, and also the fracture threshold. And you know that weight-bearing activities, daily high-impact forces like jumps, are essential for bone health. And you can do it easily with younger people. You can do it easily as a prevention measure. But for people with severe osteoporosis, however, these high-impact forces are contraindicated. So the let's say, magnitude of exercise intervention with patients with manifest osteoporosis is really less compared to the preventive effect. And I think this should be kept in our mind that for osteoporosis, the prevention is the best therapy under parentheses. Last but not least, back pain. Low back pain is one of the most common medical problems in modern societies. Etiology diverse and specific causes often unknown. Muscular strength training should properly prescribed resistance exercise is thought to help overcome structural weakness that may predispose one to low back pain. And what are the effects of a resistance training? Increased cross-sectional area of lumbar extensions, decreased fatty infiltration of the lumbar extensions, increased strength, endurance, decreased pain, decreased rate of future spinal surgery. Reductions in lost work time and improved psychosocial function. Again, the effects of exercise, both as preventive but also as rehabilitation therapy in back-home patients. Well, and let's close with this slide. You know this pyramid saying how you have to apply resistance training, and this is not only for patients with back pain or with osteoporosis, but you can use this pyramid to all the other patients involving prevention. So saying that you have to start with adaptation training, meaning about 30% of the maximum strength. You have to adapt the patients to different machines, to adapt how to make the strength training. And then you should start with the muscular endurance training. Look about 30 to 60%, and we see with about more than 15 reps, 2 to 3 sets, and the rest in between the sets should be 1 to 3 minutes. And this is the usual training with patients. In some conditions, you can increase the intensity of the strength training up to 60 to 8%. Then you achieve a training of the muscle hypertrophy. It's about 6 to 15 reps, and if you remember all the recommendations for patients, either for cardiac patients or for diabetes, was about 10 to 15 reps. You can vary the sets, and the rest should be 2 to 5 minutes. So you have good instrument to, let's say, coach a patient, not only with endurance exercises, you all know, with heart rate or with VO2max or other things, but also the strength training for your patients. So use it or lose it. This is the law of physical activity and the effects. And the goal for us all should be to die young and healthy as late in life as possible. And I think that physical activity can contribute a lot to this. Thank you for your attention.